We're live.
What about the music?
We're not done the pre-pod yet. We've just been listening to you
Talking nicely about stuff.
Yeah, just how you'd like
Chris
to.
has been starting on it early.
Aye, we're all brave when the red light's no on, eh?
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
very
well,
brave.
that's, private.
Topic
So, welcome.
of today's pre-pod bants is what? Novids.
Novid.
And days in the office.
Well, it's the kind of, there's a lot of people going about with a bit of sniffing, forgetting that in 2019 we had this exotic thing called a cold. And it was like there.
Julie's got a persistent cough. I've noticed that.
It's not a persistent cough. It's just a wee sore throat and a cough. I've got the Novids.
Novids, not the COVID.
Yeah, and I was seeing a Twitter conversation with my son and some of his friends laughing at some of his pals going, we need a name for this. We need a name for this new thing. And somebody's going, cold. That's the name you've got for it now. That's what about you've got the Novids, big man. It's all right. You've all got
I like it. My particular favourite, though, is where people have the Novids, do a test to confirm they don't have the Novids, then do about another million tests over the course of the next week just to make sure you still don't have the Novids. It's like, well, no, you don't. You've just got a cold.
Well, and apparently we're all going to get the flu jab. Well, flu's going to kill thousands of people.
But it always did.
I know.
I mean,
20,000 on average, I think.
20,000.
Less
No,
last year,
not an
though.
average. I think that's a height.
No, it's not.
Mm.
No, each year.
No, I don't. I think that's quite high.
It's not. Okay. Well, maybe just do some research.
Julie's now looking up.
How many people die each year from the flu?
It's less than 20,000.
Oh, I'm not going to start until we get that number.
We're waiting. Stuart can edit.
I'll edit this down.
Oh, it says 4 minutes to read, though.
And the number.
I know, you just want a number. This is the trouble with the internet.
I know.
Come on, 4 minutes. Fuck off. Just get time for
Come on,
that. I
Google.
just want a number. It doesn't even need to be verified.
Stuart, you
I
pick
just
a
need
number.
a number.
I'll pick a number. 8,000. I'll say 5,000.
Sorry. So okay.
Okay. All right. I'll say that's an okay.
I know. I know. I
That's
know
an
what's
okay
coming.
if you're shafted, Bob bag. I'd say 20,000.
Well done, Stuart.
Thanks, Stuart.
The Health Foundation reports that in a bad flu year, on average, around 30,000 people in the UK die from flu and pneumonia, the loss of around 250,000 life years. There's a sixth of life years lost to COVID. This is a sixth of the life years lost to COVID. So this is an article about it just being a bad flu season. And they were saying it's not just a bad flu season, but a lot of people. Although last year it was about half of that number.
Because we haven't
or a
been
fraction
out.
of it, because nobody went anywhere.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Anyway.
I'm sure it was.
Well, let's
rewrite your.
All right, hang on. All right, Dr. Murdoch. Do you want to have a look at my corns?
Absolutely not.
That's the thing. You don't want to be Googling that. Right, okay, let's go.
Chris's corns.
Welcome to The Good Roundup. Good is a consultancy and we consult on brand. I'm mixing it up a bit. Every so often we get together and we just talk about brand and the varying aspects of it. As ever, I am joined by Mr. Chris Lumsden.
Hello.
And Ms. Julie Murdoch.
Hello.
And so here we are. We've done that was the medical portion of the podcast.
Next week's topic is going to be Chris's corns, and we'll have a phone in for everybody.
So today, Chris, you have written an article for again the good podcast being the director's cut of the articles we write up on the site.
I like that.
And this is diving a bit deeper in a topic that you wrote about, and with an interesting subject headline called "Why Content is More Important Than Brand." Discuss, Chris.
Well, it's inspired by, you've written some similar stuff in the past year about, content planning and content strategies and stuff like that. But I think, why did I write it? Because I do think that in the work that we do, and I know, we're probably going to go on and Julie will certainly challenge this a little bit, but, I like to call something a trend when I've seen it twice. But I think we're seeing more often the brand creation stuff taking precedence and being viewed as more important than potentially the next phase of branded content creation.
Do you think there's a disproportionate amount of time and effort spent on the creation of brand versus the creation of content that builds on?
Yeah, so I've described the two as, I think that content v branding is like David v Goliath.
Oh.
So branding gets all the headline billing, but content is the thing that delivers.
Where it all comes to life.
Where it all comes together. And I think as a business and an industry, or maybe not an industry, but we spend too much time and too long on the brand stuff because parts of it, let's be honest, are fun and engaging, and it can exist in a vacuum. But the rubber really meets the road when you have to bring that to bear on content creation and modern marketing. And so much of modern, I mean, we were talking earlier that modern marketing is so focused around, good quality digital branded content. And even, that process has been exacerbated over the last 2 years, hasn't it? That it's really important. And I think we should talk about it, because I don't want to underplay how important branding is. Of course, we're not going to do that, but I think it's worth talking about some of the issues that are wrapped up in that.
Well,
right?
And I think that the point about, a lot of the stuff we've talked about in the past about the importance of having robust brand foundations, if you don't have that, as soon as you get to trying to then produce content and branded content, the wheels come off rather quickly, because if that kind of foundational level of kind of what your brand is all about lacks depth, then what you then talk about runs out quite quickly as well. So it's not to say, like you say, it's not that the brand aspect and the brand creation aspect isn't really important. That's where it all starts. But I think, and Stuart said this a million times, it's not what you say on day one, is it, Stuart?
No,
it's
what
you say on day 100.
Day 100.
Yes, because all content is not created equal, is it? I mean, I think many clients or people we worked with are seduced by the channel itself, and there's not enough thought goes into what they're actually saying. So the stuff that comes through that channel is unfocused, is maybe
it's hard. It's hard now, because there's, not to state the obvious, but, in years gone by where you have fewer channels and fewer touch points, and it's relatively straightforward to produce some content, but it's the market is so, or the landscape is so fragmented now that it's not just about producing content, it's producing good content and showing up in the right places with the right message at the right time for the right person, all that kind of stuff. So the layers of complexity around that, I think, have just been exacerbated by the media landscape and the number of channels that brands are now forced to show up in.
100%. And Stuart, the number of times we do work around evaluating the efficacy of what's currently being done, and there is an efficiency discussion to be had here as well, because there's money tied up in this stuff. People creating content, doing content, applying content, publishing content. You need to understand what it's doing.
Yeah, I think it's expensive. Content, good content is expensive, but it's usually a bit of a hidden cost because it's done normally internally. So it's not as if you're paying for it, and it's expensive to do, but the rewards can be high, because ultimately what you're trying to do, whereas before you had your web page and your homepage of your website, and that's what you thought people would go to, it's now trying to go a little bit upstream from that and trying to solve a problem before hitting the homepage. So it's that kind of informational search, like how do I do good content might be part of
self-help stuff.
Is that kind of, and how do I do that, and then so rather people, a vast majority over the last 10 years on our site. Whereas it used to be people hitting the homepage because we're looking at Forest directly, we're getting more people deeper into the site.
Coming in through the blog and stuff.
Because people are kind of trying to find answers to problems, and then you want to set yourself up as an expert, and that's where the challenge is.
And just tagging on to that, the point about it being expensive, it's, you pay for it twice, because you pay to create it and then you pay for it to be seen. Yep. So if you've got shit content showing up in the wrong place, it's a double whammy.
Or arguably even worse, great content in the wrong place, or vice versa, or terrible content. I mean, it's all got to align, and that's why.
Who was it that said that shit that arrives at the speed of light is still shit?
Yeah,
I've said that before.
Yeah.
In this podcast. It's still shit.
It's true, and it is hard. And it is hard. And
we're going to unpack that a wee bit, aren't we? And I think it's interesting, because I reflect on this. When I wrote this article, I reflected a lot on our own journey on that, which you, Stuart, have been pivotal and kind of guiding, because it is complicated, and you've helped make that really simple, and I think that's part of the task. So the first point, really was that I think as a provocative statement, we spend too much time on the brand and not enough on the content. And the brand's just the start of it. It's the easy bit. It's what you do afterwards. I think the second point is, for us, I think we're in a good position to talk about content, because for us, everything tracks back to brand. And unless your brand has been properly defined, and you've built the foundations out. You don't really have a firm foundation or footing on what you're going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, is that fair?
Probably even more how you're going to talk about it.
Right.
I think it's probably.
Explain that. That's interesting.
I think because ultimately you're pushing your brand, your values primarily. We've talked about brand values in the podcast before in your content. So if one of our brand value, one of our values is simplicity. So when I'm reviewing your guys' work and when you're reviewing mine, you're always trying to make sure that you're reading it, first of all, as the person reading it, and then as a stranger. Is this simple enough to understand? Are we overcomplicating it? How can we strip it back? How can we make more sense of it? And I think that's where the content becomes a little bit ownable to you as a business rather than somebody else having an opinion.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's the job of the branding is to make you distinct, and once you're distinct, or your brand's distinct, then you can then talk about stuff in that way or that tone, or embrace it in different ways, and also in the channels you use as well. You mentioned that because it should give you an idea of where you should be and where you shouldn't, right?
Yeah, and tone is interesting because there's a lot of chat about tone of voice and brand tone of voice, and I think this is where the tone can flex because obviously the way that you're going to be talking maybe on the homepage of your website might be different from being in your journal or your blog or wherever you're going to put your content. And what's even more important then is that the values kind of rise above tone of voice a little bit, that as long as the values are coming through, the tone of voice can flex.
Yeah, they keep it honest.
Channel. Yeah, just to keep it there. So that's another aspect.
So I guess it's about making sure that the brand has focus, and which in turn gives the content a focus, which helps.
I think just as and I know we'll probably touch on this later, but in terms of focus, and something you talk about a lot as well, Stuart, about is understanding who it's for and what it's doing and what it's delivering. So, we spend a lot of time, or have spent a lot of time over the years working with clients early in their engagement with them, saying, do less, but do it better and make sure it's more focused. There's often a temptation to chase the big number, isn't it? Which particularly maybe through social channels, it's about likes and engagement as opposed, likes versus engagement, but what it actually is delivering in terms of ROI and what's the broader business goal that it ultimately tracks back to is a question that's often missed in the rush to just create stuff.
Especially if you have an understanding before you set out that the content is going to be expensive, you fucking better be looking for an ROI. Otherwise, it's an expensive bit of nothing. And
see that when you start creating video and stuff like that, it can be expensive.
I think, and I think don't get Stuart started on video at the moment. I think on that, just in terms of from a cost element, one of the things that we have, and it's not relevant for every client, depending on what their goal is in terms of what that content's doing, but thinking about, and it ultimately comes down to that kind of having a solid strategy and plan in place for your content. So understanding where, creating a kind of anchor asset, if you like. Now that might be a piece of film, or it might be a white paper, or it might be a client case study or success story, but then creating that then using that kind of core content and repurposing it across a number of channels, tailoring it for slightly different audiences, for slightly different touch points and channels. And I think we've seen teams within, whether it's internal teams, whether it's agency teams, producing a lot of content that lives in silos, as opposed to kind of undertaking that planning piece first off, and then creating one sort of core piece of content and then feeding it out and tailoring it and tweaking it. From a budget point of view, it's more efficient.
I mean, the other side of that is that we've had companies come in and say the problem with our content is that it's bland. And that's part of the thing about again, it's a different kind of focus. It's kind of, the problem is that you're trying to appeal to everybody. And the essence of any kind of content strategy is also who you're not going to talk to. But otherwise, that's why it's bland, because you're afraid of upsetting anybody or having an opinion on something.
Saying everything and saying nothing. Yeah.
And that's where a lot of it, where you look at it, it's just kind of, it's pointless.
Who are you not for?
Yeah.
But I think that's what I like about our content. I was speaking to somebody about it this morning, actually, that I think from whether it's the articles, whether it's this podcast, I think it's been really useful, particularly over the last year or so, whether it's including links within a proposal, whether it's linking out from the case studies on our site to say, have a read of this, and this will give you a view, or listen to this, and it'll give you a view in terms of, or a bit of an insight in terms of how we think about brand and how we tackle and how we think about some of these issues, these big brand issues. And if and some of those opinions are quite strong and provocative, and and aren't everyone's cup of tea. So it's but we're not trying to be all things to all people. You know, there's a particular type of marketeer and business person that, you know, we want to, and client that we want to work with. And I think it's being a bit bold about that, or confident about that.
And the other side of that is your content, depending on how you're using it, but that content also needs to be shared internally, which is something that we've not been great at from time to time, that we kind of do it and then it's there, but another way to make that content come alive and is that exactly in that use case, but you can only share that content if you share it internally first and go, this is an asset for everybody else to do. And it's always thought about, right, going, we need this in social, we need this in an email, we need this out on the YouTubes or whatever. And it's sometimes like, we'll need to pull it back and put it into, let your team know that they've got tools that they can use.
Yeah, there's assets there that
they can use.
Yeah, I think, and you guys have touched on just to move it on to the next bit that I call out in this piece is about, for me, because it is hard. We've said it's hard, and your point about people saying, well, our content's bland because it's meant it kind of all things to all people. It's so important to keep it simple. We talked about simplicity, and this is where I reflect on our own stuff and being able to walk before you run and all of these things. Because there's often a temptation to try and boil the ocean, isn't there? Let's do everything from a standing start. Many clients that we work with have had very limited success in creating content or doing anything. So it's about, let's do one or two things well. And I think that what really helped us, or for me, Stuart, when I saw the light, was when you helped us with that really simple strategy statement that we've got, and you've talked about it before in a podcast, and the fact that we understand our channels. So for us, it's about the written content in the blog, it's about this audio piece, and it's about case studies, really. And there's some social stuff all around, but it all points to these things, doesn't it?
We know who it's for, and we know what it's doing.
Absolutely, and the content strategy statement helps guide that. And when I wrote the piece, you write it down and you go, when I write this down, it looks simple, and actually it is simple, but that's because we spent ages knocking the rough edges off it and saying, we're not doing that, we're doing this, we're choosing not to do that, and we're going to be like this, and our tone is going to be like this, and it's going to be provocative, it's going to be fun, but it's going to be simple and informative, right?
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about the content strategy statement, which I shall put a link into about how to create your own content strategy statement. The interesting thing is it's balanced. The strategy statement explains what we're going to get out of it and why we are doing it. And it also identifies who we're doing it for and what they're going to get out of it as well, which I think is a thing that you've kind of got to at least then balance. And sometimes anytime that we feel that we're going a little bit off track, that statement is always there to say, no, we're not doing it.
It's your guiding light, isn't it?
Yeah, we're just, this isn't, and we're going to do a podcast and Julie went, I don't think this is quite right because who we are doing it for is we forgot that, and it's like, no, that's right.
And it stops us, I write this about the familiar agency pitfall, and it's everywhere, which is, look at the work we've done, look at this design, look at this work, which is a real problem. And it flips that on its head, and it's about the stuff we think that our audiences are going to find interesting rather than stuff we've done for other people.
Well, again, it's seductive when you to talk about your own domain expertise when it's work. Now, showing great work is not necessarily a great podcast topic. That's fine for video, but
look at this,
and trust me, it's beautiful. See, this car looks fantastic. There's a lot. You've got to just
let me describe it for you.
Shiny. Have you ever seen the James Bond? It's like one of his motors, right? And then there's a bottle of whiskey on it. It's magic. And so we've there's that kind of thing about this isn't the best medium for showing that work. So you've then got, but you don't want to talk about even how you got the work there. It's more. We want people to. One of the things I say is that any piece of content that you share, ideally, should give somebody a promotion. What I would love is that anybody who's reading the work, this is probably the vision rather than the content strategy statement, but the vision is anybody who reads a piece of content that you create could then go to their superior and go, I've got an idea, and actually can make it actionable as well. And that's an aspiration. I'm not saying that, but it's definitely something that I'm writing about all the time. It does help,
and it helps guide, like you say, guide what we don't do as much as it helps.
Yes. If it's just, if you look at the old, when you go back, because we never take anything down the blog, it's all very, here's some work that we've done, which is nice, and the work's great, and we're proud of the work, and it's easy to talk about, but is it overly interesting? I don't know.
It's also really easy to talk about ourselves not necessarily in relation to the work, but what, I think, and that's the point of the content strategy, isn't it? It always comes back to the question of how's that benefiting a client?
Yeah.
What's a client going to learn from here and that's going to be useful and relevant for them? Or what kind of insight is giving them in terms of how we would tackle issue X, Y, or Z? Do you know what I mean? Where it's you just sit and scratch your head about, I don't know, things that agencies typically do wrong or whatever. It's like that's maybe useful in a different agency forum, but
different audience.
That's not the audience. Crucially, that's not the audience that we're trying to.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the stuff you've got to kind of get your head around when you're thinking about creating your own content. You've kind of got to understand. On one hand, there's the ease of something that you can get into. You can easily talk about that, and that's fine. We could absolutely write all day about the work that we do. It's a little bit harder and takes a little bit more thought, but ultimately it's more productive. And while even our own content's expensive, it's brought us business. It has, and it's worked. It's been a long game.
It is a lot, but I think that's a key point to the client, and you can apply this thought process that we've for ourselves to clients as well. That it does, and very often we're at the beginning of the journey with them. I mean, we've been living this for 3 years.
Yeah.
It does take time, and it takes a commitment, and it takes spend, and it takes effort, and scratching your head thinking about what we're going to talk about. But the content statement keeps you right, keeps you honest, because it's so. I just remember prior to that, we were in that behavioural kind of trope of show things we've done, which comes very naturally because the media, the channels are very forgiving of that behaviour. But for the consumer, I think it's just scroll fest.
And it's the same, but if you think we did the same with our case studies historically, you write it as the story of the project as opposed to insight, learnings, whatever it may be, and tie that to an issue around brand that is then either useful when it comes to demonstrating how you've approached it and how you've tackled it and how we think about it, or useful in term as a learning for a client. You know, I think it's easy to tell stories about why you crafted a logo in that particular way. But it's who's that? It's just a bit of a vanity project, isn't it? Yeah.
So
not to say though that as an aside, because we do have a lot of conversations about this within the creative team, that there isn't a role and a place for some of that content.
100%, because there is an audience for that for us.
Absolutely,
100%.
And great creatives want to work for a firm that produces great creative. So
and we can tell them where they are. It's a joke.
Of course it was a joke. No, but that's, again, to go back to, that's why we understand our channels. And that's also why having a test and learn kind of approach is interesting, because when we put work up on LinkedIn, it gets nothing because it's just another pretty picture on the thing. When you actually kind of come up and go, here is something that you might find helpful to help you with your job or your role, or
a provocative statement on something that's relevant.
Then you see the engagement go up, because LinkedIn, but Instagram, that's where we'll put our work. That's where we'll showcase our work, because that's the best medium for that.
And then some channels we're not in at all. Why would we be in Facebook? Okay. And then I think a lot the kind of last part of the piece that I talk about is that we get to a point with our clients is the discussion about who is it that's responsible for this stuff. And that's quite a big discussion, I think. There's a reason the three of us are sitting here doing this and talking about it and writing about it. It's because we should be, in my view, in our view, because it's hard. And I think, and we have the most, I suppose, experience and knowledge and we have the capability to talk about these at lots of different aspects and different levels. And sometimes when we're dealing with clients, they think that it can be subcontracted, don't they? They think that we'll subcontract the content to either a third party, which I think is a no-no, certainly in the early stages, or to some more junior members of the team. And I think that's a problem. Do you agree?
I think it gets interesting when you're going to say that, the original title, the title being is content more important than brand. And I think to try and get the content right in your tone, because the effort that's involved in creating good content that that's going to tick a number of boxes is hard to get. I would suggest that you at least try and do a number of articles yourself for a couple of reasons. First of all, you'll realise how hard it is. And then it justifies, if you do decide to go to a third party, which might be an option depending on the size of the business you're in. It's not something we would necessarily get involved in, but I think you you then understand what you're paying for and why you're paying for it, I think is interesting. Secondly, you start to decide, you define yourself what you like and what you don't like, and it's going to be easier to brief.
Yeah. I think that's the key point for me, because I don't think subcontracting content is a no-no, but I think it depends on the size, scale, scope of the organisation and the type of content that you're looking to produce. Because but it's like anything, there are specialists in that space who will do a very good job of it, and there are probably generalists who will do a pretty shit job of it, may charge you quite a lot for it. But I think for me, it all tracks back to making sure those foundations are solid. So are your brand foundation solid, and is it all guided by and linking back to a robust content strategy or a simple content strategy that can then be used to, do you understand, like you say, to brief and work with partners to make sure that the tone of voice is consistent, to make sure that the language is consistent, to make sure that the brand's being articulated in the right way, or whether it's a product launch or whatever it may be. Because I think that it's not, the role of every piece of content isn't necessarily going to be thought-provoking or defining a business's position in the market on X, Y, and Z. It might be a simpler, but it might be a more tactical or practical piece of content, but it still needs to be, from a consistency point of view, it still needs to be, like you say, briefed in the right way and appreciate, and that requires a level of investment, both in terms of, do you have the strategy in place, do you have the plan in place, have you recognised the time and effort and investment that's required to make sure that it's activated well, and then subcontract it.
Because there's a number of instinctive qualities that you have within an organisation that you don't really even think about. So for example, one of those things is using jargon, and we tend not to use jargon here, and it's especially digital, which is kind of acronym daft, we tend not to use it. If you then subcontract it, you might find the odd UI being mentioned and IA being mentioned and stuff. And then suddenly what you find is actually we don't talk like that. Mm-hmm. Or vice versa. Maybe for the audience that you're appealing to, maybe you need to get more technical. Mm-hmm. All these little things actually feed in, and without actually doing it yourself for a few, you don't really know what you don't know.
And you said something recently, Stuart, I think was interesting, and I agree with it, is that when you're writing some of this stuff, it helps you firm up your own view on the topic you're writing about.
I mean, I like you guys to write it to help me firm up my view on how
and that's
I
what we
disagree
do.
with you.
That's what we do. But you have a vague idea of where you want to go with it, and it's not until you start writing it you find your own voice and your opinion on it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can subcontract that. I just don't think you can.
It depends on what the level of content is.
Well, this is a very personal. Some of this is very not personal, but I think it depends on the business, because you don't necessarily. And Stuart's, I remember years ago, had this conversation with an old client where they were using Twitter as, it was a head brewer, wasn't it, who was using basically Twitter, the business's Twitter, the beer's Twitter account, to voice their but it was a very personal tone of voice. So that's not always something, that kind of personal perspective and tone of voice and
clashing with the corporate
isn't necessarily what you always want. I think I'm not disagreeing, but I'm not entirely agreeing.
I know you can have
it's context though, isn't it? It's context and circumstance.
Of course it is.
There was personality, and then there was too much personality. Because this guy definitely had a personality and was up for doing it, and then it's kind of going, great, how are we going to use that? Not control it, but then what was happening was that he was getting into arguments with other brewers.
Oh dear.
Which, while
under the corporate umbrella,
while massively entertaining. I know.
Well, you and that's interesting, because you've said to me before some stuff I've written, you said that's a LinkedIn piece, because it needs to come clearly from me.
It's been a bit of a rant.
Yeah, it might be a bit of a rant or something, rather than the sort of publicly stated view of our business, right?
Yeah.
Which is
I don't really look at it like that, because I look at it going, this is my view, which happens to be in the business that I'm a part of, and we'll put it up. But I think there's definitely the time where it didn't hit the content strategy. That was it. It didn't hit the content strategy, and it was more kind of,
it's like something you're reflecting and having an making observations on something, but it's not something that a client's going to learn something from other than your opinion about.
Yeah, which is hugely interesting, but not on our site.
Well, exactly.
I mean, and that's okay. And so it's not that it doesn't have a value; it's just the right content in the right place. And that's where the content strategy, you kind of go. And there's only 4 points to it, really tied up in a sentence. You go tick, tick, tick. That makes sense. Or actually, what do we do with it?
Well, and you need those individuals to help you edit your own and your own points of view.
Yeah, and I think this is where we're lucky, and that we are, the only sign off we've got to get is from the three of us.
True.
I think one of the interesting challenges with content is that, and this is where the subcontracting content operation is as hard as content creation, which I know is almost the same thing, and it's a subset of it. But it's the thing where trying to get the content written, and it's from the CEO, but it's not really from the CEO, and then it's sign off. Then, depending who you are, it's got to go to legal. We've seen that a couple of times. You're going, you know what, you're killing this. And I know, again, it's easy for us to say, but you're trying to get part of the content, depending what it is to try and place some humanity into an organization and go, look, we're people working with people, and we are going to talk to you like people. And people can also tell quite quickly when it just has been over corporatized. Sanitized.
Death by 1,000.
So that's kind of it. Shall we summarize?
Shall we summarize?
You summarize, Jules.
Thanks, Jules.
I don't know if our summary points are still relevant based on where we started, but we can build on those if we need to.
Like it.
So, first point is about simplicity. Keeping it simple, be focused, and make sure you walk before you can run.
I think that and I'm guilty of this. I love a report. And
he does.
You do. And the thing is about it is that you're wanting to measure. It's expensive, so you're looking at ROI. And sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, you're trying to get to the end point of the reporting when actually maybe day one is, let's just get 3 pieces of content that we're happy with up a month.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't look at the SEO. Don't just start getting it's
into the habit.
Cadence in the right habit.
Yeah, and just kind of getting the muscle memory up. So sometimes it's not necessarily at the start. Let's see how many people, what's the bounce rate, what's the time on page, all that stuff. That can come. The first thing is having content there.
Second thing is kind of an extension of that. Well, no, it's not an extension of that. Is about being clear who it's for and what it's delivering. So at the appropriate point, put in those measurement frameworks and reporting frameworks to make sure that where you're investing is what you're investing is delivering what you have.
Good. Yeah.
Allocate resources is the next one, which is your point about whether that's internal or whether it's external, but appreciate and understand the complexities of it and the fact that it's hard, and the time and financial effort that is or the time and financial investment it'll take to do it well.
Yeah, and I think internal buy-in is because you're trying to get content from a wide area of sources within the organisation. It can be an organisation-wide endeavour, and you need buy-in from that. It's not really fair to say, right, one person sitting in the corner, you've got to create content. You need to it needs to be bought in. So somebody may be coming to talk to you about what you do. And you don't need to write anything, but we need you to kind of be there for it. And it needs that kind of, that it is important and that it is going to...
priority within the business.
And believe it or not, this content will help grow your business.
And last, but definitely not least, fail to plan to fail. Make sure it's all built on, from a solid content strategy and plan. So that everything, it's a reference point essentially for every piece of content that you produce.
And a content strategy is reasonably easy to do. It's 4 points put into a sentence. I'll put a link to it, and that will absolutely guide you when you don't know what you're doing. I mean, there's a whole lot of other stuff about what are the content ideas and making, there's content strategy after that about, idea generation and what are we going to talk about. But if you don't have that at the beginning, you don't have that filler. So that's key and reasonably straightforward.
Good. So brand's important, but so is content.
Content's where it all comes to life.
Yeah.
Good.
Right.
It's been fun, chaps.
It's been fun.
See, we've been back on it. We've done 2 in 2 weeks, and we're like, oh, masters. It's like,
2 months' time, there'll be another one.
This is our own content. Yeah.
There you go. So, it's just keep at it. So, thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Mind the
roads. Bye-bye.